Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the party. Welcome to Simply Cyber Firesides. Tonight, we're going to be diving deep into a variety of topics that are absolutely centered around cybersecurity, but we're going to be talking to two industry titans, and you guys know them because they've both been on the show in the past about these topics, and they've got strong opinions, y'all. That's the whole point of this specific show. It's an opportunity for Bryson and John to let rip. There's no sacred cyber cows tonight. First up, we're going to have John Strand. Many of you know John, but if you don't, he is the founder of Black Hills Information Security. John's decades of experience in the industry have made him a renowned figure in the cybersecurity community. His practical approach and ability to break down complex topics into wicked easy to understand terms makes him a really great speaker and a genuinely great guy. Alongside John tonight, we're going to be joined by none other than Bryson Bort, CEO of Scythe. Bryson's deep understanding of red teaming, pen testing, these items, owning a business, running a business, a lot of government work. It's going to be bringing a lot of unique perspectives into the discussion, and his insights into attack techniques and strategies on moving, into or out of businesses are really going to be invaluable, especially for some of the topics that we're going to be getting into. Believe me, we were getting into it pre-show, and it's going to be epic. Now, remember, we are a community, Simply Cyber folks, so I want to promote engagement. We're all about inclusion, so feel free to engage with each other. And if you have any questions or comments, you want to echo something they're saying, you want to hit hashtag preach, whatever you want to do, it's all about good times up in here at Simply Cyber. So without further ado, let's rip the Band-Aid off and get after John and Bryson. All right, John, how are you?
I'm doing great. From my comfy office on the floor of Denver International Airport in a hallway, I found a place with a power plug just kind of close to my gate. So I'm going to be jetting right away at the top of the hour. But really, really happy that I was able to make it here and get on with you guys today.
Yeah, and we appreciate it, John. Doing it from the airport floor shows, you're obviously committed, and I appreciate that. Bryson, how you doing today, bud?
I am trapped in my beautiful office in St. Petersburg, Florida. And John, I feel you. I lived on the road for the last 3 months.
Yeah. And I don't know what you have on your head. I am a straight man. I love my wife, but dude, that suits you well. Okay. We're just gonna leave it at that. Like it looks phenomenal. So
Hey, John, remember, it also smells good.
it also smells. Oh, now that's context. That's context. All right.
Oh my God! All right, well let's get right into it, guys. The first topic I thought you guys might have some concepts on is the impact of private equity on cybersecurity. We've seen a lot of acquisitions lately, a lot of money moving around. Gentlemen, we'll throw it to John first. John, what are your thoughts on the impact of PE?
I am so glad I'm going first because I do not want to follow Bryson on this. Because anytime I have any questions about private equity, and really almost everything I know about private equity comes from Bryson and his experience in dealing with it, because I've kind of avoided it for a long, 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 long time. But whenever I'm looking at companies, private equity, who's invested in them, I really kind of cringe because it seems in a lot of ways there are good private equity people out there that do a fantastic job. One of my favorites is Arnie Bellini, Bellini Capital. He does a great job, truly wants to see companies succeed. He was the founder of ConnectWise, and he does great, but he's rare, right? A lot of the people that get into the private equity space, they literally just want to hold that company, maximize the profit margins as much as they can to the point where they can sell it to another investment firm as an upscale, and then they can make a lot of money. And it becomes a game of who's holding the bag at the end. Who are the last people to hold the value of this company whenever everything goes to hell? Or does it actually go public and then it goes to hell? But I'm going to kick it back over to Bryson because, like I said, he is truly the person that I've talked to the most about this. And he's truly the mentor for me. And I think a lot of people in the space for navigating it. So, Bryson, what are your thoughts?
Well, first of all, thanks for the compliment, John. I've always been happy to help. And being a founder, being a CEO is a really lonely, rarefied air. And there's a handful of us, John and I and some others, that all really stay in close contact just because there's experiences and things that we go through. And even if we don't know the answer, at least we're not going to, feel like we're crazy because it's like, I can't believe this is a thing, which John and I can both speak to, having numerous calls on that kind of stuff. But let's start why we're here. So first, I always like to remind everyone how young cybersecurity is. And why that's relevant is you have this mishmash of investment to the operational parts. And it's the operational parts we spend most of our time as practitioners discussing, right? How do I do cybersecurity? How do I do that flavor of cybersecurity? How do I get my leadership to actually buy into any cybersecurity? Which is, I think, the starting point for a lot of you being frustrated is your leadership doesn't actually care about cybersecurity. Let's put that to the side. So the current epoch is 2013. After the Target breach, and for lots of different reasons, that's when the market said, okay, there's money here because we have a need that is missing for business. So Target created budgets, budgets created the investors then pursuing this.
And
So
Bryson, can you also talk a little bit about the mythology that was created around because you got the head thing on the unicorns in computer security. A handful of unicorns start calling in more and more money because they see some of these firms that just go big, and everybody thinks that there's a there as well.
So from 2013 until 2022, we have the market that John is describing, which is literally we can fuel the steam engine train of modern cybersecurity investment by shoveling cash into it. And it was an ever-changing FOMO of throwing cash at problems. And I talk about this because while there's a lot of pretend at the science behind investment, mostly what I've seen is there's a lot of psychology and art. And some of that could be the mafia. And by the mafia, I talk about the unicorn mafia of, this person came from PayPal, therefore they're going to be good at this. And they're going to bring these folks we saw at this startup. And investors like that. And they like seeing that and investing in that. But there was very much this race to the top where a whole bunch of money was on the sidelines going, looking at the verticals, because cybersecurity is just one tiny vertical in an overall business landscape. And so these money folks are looking at it and going, well, there's a huge opportunity there because, say, manufacturing has chilled. I'm not going to be making much in manufacturing. Energy has lots of volatility. This cybersecurity thing looks like a ride to the top, and they're just chasing it. What happened then is, so actually, let's quickly describe it, because investors are not all created equal. For those of you who don't know, I'm an angel investor, part of where I advise folks on helping create their own company, when to raise, when not to raise, why not to raise, all of those things, how to build a better pitch deck. That's something that I like to do because I like building up the next generation of entrepreneurs who are going to come in bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, because I'm more cynical and dead-eyed at this point, so they can take the hard work and try to go do it. And that's why I like being an angel investor. But private equity is not this monolith. There's a bunch of these different kinds of institutions that invest at different points in the journey. The ones you're going to be most interested to start off are what are called seed and pre-seed. So these are folks who are going to write small checks, probably $500,000 to $1.5 million, to anchor a small round of investment to get an idea going. And then as you get up into the later stages where companies have showed a certain amount of product fit, market maturity, and financial performance, you start getting institutions then that write bigger checks. It's not really until the very end, usually what would be considered probably a D or E round. So we're now talking your company's making at least $100 million a year, that you start to see the true private equities that, harken back to the Danny DeVito and other people's money in the 1980s movie days. And what they're looking for is what John was talking about, right? I bought this asset. How do I wring value out of this asset within a very defined time frame? And usually that's a short time frame. So they're looking for somewhere typically about a 5-year turnaround where it's like, okay, I can do this. It's usually why you see a lot of cuts. And this ties back to what the big shift was in 2022. So I was talking about that race to the valuations and everyone was trying to put money in. In 2022, it came back to earth. There was a cybersecurity investment bubble. And so what a lot of you are seeing out in the market where you saw all these layoffs for the last 2 years, that's a lot of what drove it, because you had these companies that, like I said, were fueled by cash just into a furnace. That's not a sustainable business. And when you're not making money, which is the purpose of a growth company, because there's 3 aspects to a company. All of you know revenue and expenses. That difference is profit. But in a growth company, you're intentionally losing money on purpose because you're trying to get this momentum going, which brings in the third quality. What is the strength of my investors? And this is where private equity has come and made such a big play to help stabilize. And they're starting to pick the companies now that are going to make it to the next round and those that aren't. And so I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but it does not look like the market's going to be changing at least in the next 9 months. I think the second half 2025 is our next chance to see some stabilization where globally business in the investment in cybersecurity and the budgeting allows us all to know what's going to happen. So,
And from my perspective, I think that's fantastic because I want it all to burn to the ground. And the reason why I say that, because we're kind of trying to make this stuff unfiltered. I've seen a lot of great ideas that get started up, right? And if you get the wrong investors, they end up cutting the staff back as much as they possibly can. Once they start getting some sales, so they can increase their profit margin, so they can go to their next round of funding and bring in another group of suckers to take more and more of that debt, and then they can do their exit. The investors can do their exit. The other thing that you see with a lot of these firms is they have a portfolio of companies. So if you get brought in as a portfolio of that venture capital or private equity firm, they then force you to purchase and acquire the rest of the products that are within that portfolio to drive that quote unquote revenue up for all the rest of their products. Once again, it's almost like a really twisted pyramid scheme where they're trying to generate revenue and they're trying to generate everything but being focused on making a kick-ass product. And that is my concern, right? And that's why I want to see it burn, because I see a lot of this where it ends with either everything gets bought up and then finally a very large firm ends up acquiring it, realizing they got something that was garbage, but they have billions of dollars to burn anyway, and they're just going to move on to something else, and a really badass technology dies in the crib. My favorite example of this is Darktrace. Darktrace is objectively a really freaking cool product. And I say that from somebody who has a competitor in active countermeasures. It is awesome. It is very cool mathematically what is going on. However, whenever you're looking at the investment, you look at what's been going into it, a lot of the technology is kind of stagnated and it isn't getting as much fuel in the technological innovation that it used to get into it. And then you have people like the investor in the UK that said it's snake oil, which I thought that was a bit harsh, but you get these companies that start getting starved for technological innovation because all of the focus has been all on like growth and the finances of it. And then you have one of the founders end up dying in a ship that sinks off the coast in a storm, and they have secrets in a safe, and just shit gets weird at that point. But I think that's for me. I really love to see small, agile businesses that have a group of people or an individual that's driving that technological innovation, that gets investors that genuinely believe in the mission and what that company wants to be and want to support that technological innovation. And it isn't everything of we need to get costs dropped as much as we can, get revenue as high as we can in a very short period of time. Quality of the product, quality of customer service be damned. Get the sales, get the sales, get the sales, get to the next round, get out, make our money, and walk away while everything burns. That's why I think it's a great thing. If this whole entire, the vast majority of the way PE and VC works just dies, because it's killing so many beautiful ideas that are out there before they have a chance to actually grow into fruition.
So I'm gonna jump on that because I'm also gonna now be contentious. I love arguing with John. So what are the outcomes of a startup? I go bankrupt and die, which rarely happens. Usually you get repackaged into something else. We've already just discussed I get bought by the PE, but probably the more common, or used to be more common, I don't know what the stats are, is actually a strategic acquisition. So we call them the Magnificent Seven, right? Microsoft, the Cisco's, that
like
buy other.
The squeaky toys in Toy Story. I've been chosen.
Yeah, I'm getting this one this year, and I get this one this year. And I don't want to get into the financial reasons for that, but there's a lot of incentive for large business to use cash that way. And on that note, I actually think one of the new definitions of a unicorn in this post-2022 space, and I haven't seen anyone else, this is my definition, where I was talking about the three qualities of a company. It's going to be earlier stage startups that are profitable, because the larger companies can no longer afford to bring on the financial risk in the situation that is affecting them and their access to capital. So they're going to be looking for what's called accretive acquisitions, where not only is it strategically aligned or there's some reason I want to buy it, but it's immediately affecting the bottom line in a positive way. That, to me, I think is going to be the new unicorn, the earlier profitable company. But putting that back to John, and where I wanted to argue that is, I think we have this idea of the financial boogeyman where they're coming in. And like I said, go watch Other People's Money by Danny DeVito if you want to see basically the origin. In fact, I've worked with the law firm that first created this entire concept of being able to take over other companies and the hostile takeover. It actually started in the 70s before it was popularized in the 80s. I know the random things you meet along the way in life. But the point being is, how many of those strategic acquisitions do you think go any differently than what you do to what a private equity does it? I mean, I often joke, whatever the name is that's bought you, turn that into a 4-letter word and a verb, because that's about to happen to you. And everyone is always like in honeymoon for the first year. Oh, we got bought by so-and-so. They haven't touched us. Everything is great.
Oh,
Almost
dude.
every single time to the mark on month number 12, everything just goes whoomp. And you watch the layoffs and the reorganization, and you watch that product momentum get outsourced to India and drop off.
Yeah, and I think it really boils down to, if anybody has an amazing idea, and I think that we both agree on this, choose your partners wisely, right? If you're in it just for the money, and you start losing control of your vision and your company, and you don't bring in a partner that's part of that vision, they're going to fuck you. It is just going to happen. And that is, I think, the key differentiator. So I talk to a lot of companies and we start talking about who's investing and what do they expect to get out of it. What is their goals and objectives? How much ownership? What do they want to control? Do they want to control the technical aspects? Do they want to control just the marketing and sales aspects? What is their approach to sales? There's so many questions to this, but I think that there's so many founders of companies that get blinded by very large dollar signs. And they also believe so firmly that they're going to be the one. They're going to be the spooky toy in Toy Story that gets accepted and goes off into heaven, that they kind of get blind to all the potential pitfalls. It's kind of like in the TV show Silicon Valley, where the guy got a lot of money and it ruined him because he accepted too much.
Yep.
And it was impossible for him to meet the objectives of what the investors wanted. And after everything's gone, he was ruined. Somebody pointed out, you could have taken less money and this wouldn't have happened to you. And he kept saying, I could have taken less. Why didn't anybody tell me that? And that greed, I think, is what drives so much of the negative consequences that we see in this industry.
So to break down what John's saying, when you raise money, it's like being given an hourglass. Because like we talked about, you're spending the hourglass. The sand is
runway.
Dropping. That's your runway. And usually the conditions they're giving it to you under in the old ways was, we want you to burn this as fast as possible. Usually 18 months, maybe 24 months. Anything longer than that, you're wasting our money, because there's a cost of capital. Me giving you cash you can't put in play, that doesn't make sense. And the other thing is, there's sort of an incentive, peer incentive to who doesn't want to brag about the biggest round. Hey, I didn't raise 10 million, I raised 15 million, right? That sounds better.
And that brings other people, right? That success, quote unquote, breeds attention in that space. Sorry, go ahead.
But it also breeds the responsibility, because you've now picked up a bigger millstone, a 50% larger millstone, where that next round, it has that additional expectation of 15 versus 10 to what you need to have accomplished before you do anything else. And so chasing the numbers, as John was using the example, by the way, the Silicon Valley show is absolutely just like real life. I have met every single character in that show in person, not actually in the show, but in real life characters that are just like every single character in that show. They're real.
Yeah, I feel like they actually pulled their punches a little bit sometimes, because some of the people are just like, you're too large to be received. And I've got like 10 minutes, and I think that's kind of getting into the next question. Jerry, do we want to set that up as far as the workforce and training?
Yeah. I felt like I just went off stage because I'm just going to produce from the back end. Yeah, so we're talking about impacts of PE on cyber, but also another element of that has to do with workforce, right? Acquisitions happen, people get laid off, or they bring in people, and there's this concept going on in our industry around lots of open jobs, but there's a lot of people looking for jobs. Where's the disconnect? So, John, what are your thoughts on that in the current state? Either that or the current state of cyber training we talked about too, John.
So I think that there are a lot of jobs out there, but I think that a lot of organizations are willing to wait for the unicorns, right? They're willing to wait for the people with the experience. They're willing to wait for the people that have the skills that they feel that they actually need. A lot of those job postings are just evergreen job postings. They're just leaving them out there, hoping that the right candidate comes through. That doesn't mean that they have that job that they want to fill right now, but they're willing to fill it for the right person. And I think that there's kind of a disconnect between that and all the people that are coming into this industry. And they're saying, well, there's all these jobs. How come I can't get a job? I'm starting out. I'm new. I don't have this experience. And they're like, well, all these people want 25 years of experience. And I think that that's just, I hate to say it, that's the reality of the situation. And you're going to have to go to Banjo Crashland's like video on hunting for a job like a hacker. You're going to have to learn how to tune your resume, not creating a good resume, but creating an excellent resume for the organization that you're going to make an application for that's tailored for that job. You're going to have to be better. Find the training that you can, find the training that you can afford, get involved in cyber ranges instead of certifications, and really try to highlight yourself as much as you possibly can. Bryson, you got some more on this too.
Back 2022 is when the job market got into what it is now. And so there are more opportunities than there are positions. I mean, there are more candidates than there are positions. You're a company. Why wouldn't you take your time?
Yeah,
and furthermore,
absolutely.
What's the pressure? What's the pressure on the business to have to hire and fill that position? Especially when that CISO right now, every year and even in the year, is being forced to say, I have to justify my budget. I mean, you want a comparison in the 1980s with IT budgets? They were like, I don't know. It's what those IT wizards do. Just give them money, give them whatever they ask, right? And then we now have that in cybersecurity because nobody really knows what they're getting for their cybersecurity. We can't measure it. We can't quantify it, not in a useful way. And so the business is looking at the CISO and going, justify your budget. Well, hey, I saved $200,000 because I didn't fill those 2 positions. I didn't fill those 3 positions for 7 months, right? I'm only benefiting from that because I'm able to show savings. I'm able to show myself as a partner, and I don't have anything that is tied to such an execution where if I don't have those people, I'm penalized. So at a macro level, the market is rewarding folks for saving money. At the managerial level, inside the leadership and how it's actually executing, I am incentivized to make the easier cut here because God forbid I rip out the product that gets blamed for how the breach happens, but I don't get in that same trouble if I didn't fill the position. And so you have these macro factors that are actually working in the background against you as a candidate in the market. And then I want to put the other cap on all of this because I don't think we can say it enough. Cybersecurity fundamentally is not a beginner position. It is fundamentally not a beginner position. I think a lot of people have either been lied to, misled, sold a bill of goods that, hey, come out of college, do your 4 years, and we can throw you right into a good cybersecurity position. And it's not that that can't happen, but systemically it won't, because it is a journey person level. You need to know system and network administration or application security and development at such a level that when you go into cybersecurity, you're Googling commands that you forgot, not Googling commands you've never done.
Yep. And I think that's a huge differentiator. And when you talk about letting those jobs sit, our generation are the group of people that are now running like CISOs, CTOs. When I see CISOs, CTOs, they're people that are in my age group, right? And there's one big thing that's a difference between our age group now versus the people that were running things in 2000. In the 2000 and the odds. They didn't know, and they just hired and they threw bodies at computer security. They're like, fuck, just somebody knows how to do security, throw them at it, right? Get a lot of people. And the people that have been doing this that actually came up through computer security, we know, and I talked about this in the pre-show, that a really qualified, highly trained, experienced security professional can run circles around 10 people that are just getting started in computer security. So they are absolutely 100% willing to let those jobs sit open. And when the right candidate shows up, fill that position with the right candidate. Because I know at BHIS, I know Bryson's companies, like we are always looking for unicorns, right? We are always looking for those people. And as Bryson said, yeah, it's harsh to come to that conclusion. But at the exact same time, I have hired people right out of college. I have hired people that are relatively new to computer security, but they are absolutely the tippy top of that iceberg of the talent pool. So I'm telling you, being able to go into a job, getting a couple of certifications, and then simply saying, yep, I've got some certifications, I should be hired now. You ain't going to get there. You're going to have to work your ass off. You're going to have a GitHub repository where you're writing code that you can demonstrate that you can think in codes. You are going to have to demonstrate capabilities in cyber ranges. You're going to have to tune your resume to go after the specific organization that you're going to that you want to go work at. And those jobs are there. You absolutely can get in, but you're going to have, it's not a matter of just like, well, I'm going to be, right standard deviation, I'm going to be right in the middle of the bell curve and I'm going to get a job. No, because they're waiting for those people that are 1 to 2 standard deviations up that curve. And you can do it. You absolutely can, but it takes work. And you're going to have to work your ass off to get to that.
John, where did you find those juniors? How did you meet them?
So actually they interned with us. We burned through a lot of interns, and the 2 juniors that we have, I gave one of them a project of updating a tool called Mininet, so we could create the tool called Wi-Fi Forge. If you do a search, GitHub Wi-Fi Forge, it'll take you right to it, where we do full 802.11 network emulation, where all the tools in Kali work natively with 0 hardware. It's all emulated. That was an intern that went through and was modifying kernel headers in the make file in the tool to get it to work on modern Linux distributions. The dude is 19 years old and he's working on kernel drivers, right? I'm hiring that person. The other person is Ben. That was Joe I just talked about. Is Ben. These are just 2 of my most recent unicorns that we found. Ben won the DEF CON Capture the Flag for AI hacking this year at DEF CON and barely missed out on a black badge, or last year, I think it was. And he is absolutely phenomenal. Both of them are out of Dakota State University, and they have those skills to basically do the jobs that I want them to do. But once again, the vast majority of candidates that I get are people that are passing understanding of Linux, passing understanding of networking, but they can't go in and start writing kernel drivers, and they don't understand how these tools work. They can't communicate in code, be it Python or Golang or Rust. And it's like they can write hello world, but that's about as far as they go. So I'm telling you, if you're new, that's what you're going up against. Those are the people that I am constantly looking for to hire.
Yeah, and this is all great information. I know, John, you're going to have a quick turnaround here in just a minute, but I did want to talk. We're talking about these individuals, and basically, you just mentioned 2 interns that had demonstrated practical skills. Practical skills absolutely reign supreme in our industry right now. But how do you get those skills? There's a lot of different training. What do you think about the current state of training in cybersecurity?
I think the current state of training is fantastic, right? The amount of free or very low cost solutions that are out there to get you that core basic security training is off the charts, right? I think the days of like very large cash cow security training are dying. If you're going to be charging that much money for training, you better be bringing something that they cannot get on YouTube, and they cannot get in a pay what you can class, and they cannot get someplace else for very low cost. And I think that that's a good thing for the industry. I think that a lot of the core introductory skills that are out there, they shouldn't be super expensive to get. But I do think a lot of very specialized stuff, like if you're talking about hacking reverse engineering firmware, reverse engineering wireless signals other than 802.11 and custom things, that should be expensive training. It absolutely should be. But when we're looking at it right now, you have John Hammond, you have the Cyber Mentor, you have Anti-Siphon, you have the Simply Cyber family that's out there. There's all of these things that are available to you to get your ass moving in the right direction. You should take advantage of those things. And then find groups of interest and find people in the Discord servers and the community that are interested in the same thing you're at, and just start taking apart protocols, start taking apart mobile applications, start learning web application, and start doing like cyber ranges together as teams, like you're playing a video game in World of Warcraft. Go after those, that try hack me and hack the box challenges and meta CTF challenges. Do the really, really hard shit that's out there and work together as a crew. And there's absolutely jobs waiting for you once you get into that rarefied air. And with that, I need to go, everybody. Hey, Bryson, it was great seeing you as always, but I'm going to leave the rest of you in the fantastic hands of Jerry and Bryson as I scramble to my gate. Thanks, everybody. Later.
Thank you, John. Thank you. Have a good one. So, Bryson, to that point, state of cyber training. I mean, John said that it's great, fantastic right now. Do you think that it's hitting on all cylinders?
I mean, that's a tough question to speak at large about. Obviously, training is at all sorts of different levels. The things I always like to point out are more the community around it. And John was encouraging that with the teams. But this is why I like B-Sides so much, is that ability to work at the community level. Giving a shout out to here at Tampa, there's a group called the Neon Temple, and it's built like a cyber guild with local members and the local students who come together on a regular basis to teach each other and go through projects. And the thing again that I would add is So we talked about certs, we talked about education, we talked about training, we talked about projects. The networking is the final piece. I mean, this is no different than any other job in any other discipline, which is who you know very much can change all the odds for you, right? Getting your resume through a corporate HR screen is one thing. I talked about some of the macro factors that are working for you on the back end of that, against you on the back end of that. But who you know very much can help you get the jobs, because honestly, what they're actually hiring for is always going to be different than what's published. And as I talked about, the ones where the system is working against them actually needing to fill the positions that are open, that comes down to knowing that team and knowing really what the story is.
Yeah, we got some Neon Temple folks in the house. Chuck from Tampa knows about Neon Temple. Big fan of Chuck. I like him. We had some questions earlier, Bryson, that were around that PE stuff, which is really right in your wheelhouse. Of course, your wheelhouse is like actually quite large. You almost have like wheel condominiums, the amount of experience you have. Brent B, also known as Code Brew, wants to know, like, what effect do you think the acquisition, and again, if you don't want to speak about specific companies, specific PEs, that's fine. We could speak more generalized, but he's asking about the acquisition of CompTIA by a PE will have on the state of industry certs.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that was what really prompted the private equity conversation coming into this. So, I mean, I can't even remember the last time I kept a CompTIA cert up. But that also speaks to, as you get to a certain point in your career, you kind of graduate out of the certs. So I mean, again, certs have value, especially for government work, because I need to check a box. Certs can have value for getting through the HR screen. And again, some managers, there's a psychology of the COIA of it. But now the question is going to be, so a big, bad money group has bought a certification that it controls a large part of this industry. What is that going to mean? And I have no idea, of course, right? I can tell you, as we were talking earlier, we can guess strategically that their goal is going to be to get a certain amount of money. One of the other strategies that PEs have been doing in different ways, starting to see it a little bit more on the commercial side. Actually, I first started seeing it in government contracting about 10, 12 years ago, is the idea of not just building a portfolio of investments that are all disparate, but building a portfolio of investments that all actually work together. And while that may sound strange, literally most PEs, most investors are not putting things together. They're just saying, you know, that fits a gap, that fits a gap, that fits a gap, that fits a gap. And then they rarely even try to help them like get to know each other. It's just sort of like, here's my basket of investment, good luck. Whereas this, what I'm saying, is a much more operationally synergistic approach. Synergy, where I put an anchor and then I start building things that literally can like grow off of that. And then they build each other, supporting each other for overall revenue growth. So if I'm thinking of that perspective, I bought a training platform, or excuse me, I bought a certification minimal training platform that gives me access to this huge customer base, and I'm baked into a lot of requirements. What else could I add to that would grow that? Now, that could be good for the community because now we can get more things put together. But the bad side could also be that now they're going to be able to have more of a monopoly on things and they can charge more.
Yeah. When you see, I know you can't predict the future, right? But I'm curious, when you see, you know, you open the newspaper, thank you, Bryson, maybe you can get that magic 8-ball out, right? When you see something in the news like, you know, this, you know, company acquired this technology or this, you know, whatever. What are your initial thoughts around that? Is it always like the kind of the same thing, like, oh, like it looks like they're going to lose half their workforce in a year, or oh, that'd be a great company to go start looking for, you know, not you, but like they're going to start hiring, you know what I mean? Because they're going to be expanding into this space. Like, what are your initial thoughts when you see this company acquired this technology or this company acquired this company?
That things are going to be really bad there in 12 months.
Yeah.
Literally the first thing I think of every time was, oh, okay. I mean, I might update, you know, sort of my internal index of strategy, because I pay a lot of attention and I have a lot of conversations. My favorite people to talk to that really know the truth are bankers, who we haven't talked about at all. So I think bankers are in the best position. So a lot of the equity, the investment stuff that we talked about, it's this is the number, and that's what we're going to pay against that number. When it comes to banking, that is the number. That is the cash. Very conservative. This is going to be exactly what it is. And they make money both ways coming because they're the brokers that ensure the transaction happens.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's not like I walk up to you, give you a check, and you give you a piece of paper, we walk away. These are incredibly complicated things that have with the process of the overall acquisition. And so bankers have all of this insight. Point being is I'm talking to all these folks. And so one of the things I'll be doing is kind of updating in my head where the larges are, because you have these huge companies. I mean, Cisco bought Splunk for $30 billion.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a large company. That's a lot of money. So it's always important, I think, for us small folks to know what the elephants are doing, because that's how you prevent getting stepped on. And that's the most PG way I can phrase that.
Yeah, no, that's a good way to put it. I mean, Google offered 29 billion to Wiz, and they said, no, we're good. We're worth 100 billion in 6 months or 12 months or whatever they said in their response to that.
Yeah, they offered them 23. At the time, Wiz had already grown to 500 million in ARR and was projecting they would close the year at $1 billion ARR. So from that view, with that kind of trajectory, and of course, Wiz possibly looking to add acquisitions into that themselves to move into markets that are adjacent to help them grow. I'd say that was probably a really, really hard call when you're looking at that kind of money, but probably makes sense for Wiz.
It is. I mean, it's those level numbers. It's like hard to even wrap your head around. Honest, like for me, it's like the difference between 23 billion and 17 billion is they're the same number. You know what I mean?
You won the lottery.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm done. Yeah, it's generational wealth. I mean, that turns you personally, your family, into a dynasty. I mean,
yeah,
you're done. Like,
yeah,
what else do you ever need to do?
Yeah, that show Billions or Succession.
Yes, you're going to have rotten kids that all backstab each other. That's what you just bought for the rest of your lifetime.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. At least you'll be on a yacht.
That's true. That is funny. So, Bryson, what are your thoughts? I'm kind of curious now, because we're talking with Bryson Bort here. John Strand was with us earlier, and we're just talking about topics that Bryson has hot opinions on. Bryson, I'm curious. I know you mentioned B-Sides. I know you're involved with ICS Village at DEF CON. Conferences have changed quite a bit over the last, 10, 15 years, and vibes. Well, in some of instances, I'm curious, like, what do you think about conferences? Like in our industry, are they good? Are they bad? Are they cash grab? Like what I'm kind of curious about your thoughts on cons.
Well, just to correct what you said, the ICS Village is a nonprofit that operates everywhere besides, not just DEF CON.
I'm sorry. So I know you're involved with the DEF CON instance of the ICS.
No, Tom Van Norman and I co-founded the nonprofit ICS Village. ICS Village is just that instantiation at DEF CON.
Okay.
We have our own conference called Hack the Capitol. Like we have our own policy conference in Washington, D.C. We're program committee at RSA.
All right. I'm sorry. Yeah,
okay.
I completely didn't realize those things tied together. But we have promoted and talked about Hack the Capitol here on the channel. I didn't realize they were tied that way. But okay, so thank you for correcting that.
Yep.
Now, what are your thoughts about cons in general? Good, bad, ugly?
Again, it's hard to answer that because so much of that is really personal.
Okay.
I know conference organizers. I mean, John Strand would have been a great person to ask this question because John tried in different ways to, I don't think he'd phrase it this way, but I'll say this. I mean, to take from Dave the reins of the DerbyCon style, and that was Wild West Hack and Fest. They tried to grow that into more of a regional affair. And guess what? It's a lot of work.
Mm-hmm.
I've built several conference series myself, both in person, Hack the Capitol, which will be back next year, probably with a different name though. And I built several others, and it's a pain in the butt because at the end of the day, it costs money. It costs money and time. And when you're in person, that's a lot more money, and it can be really difficult. And most conference organizers don't make money. And so, but there are those who it is completely a cash grab. I can think of several off the top of my head where the reason they're doing it is not an altruistic motive of bringing community together and education. But overall, I mean, what's our alternative to getting folks together? I will tell you, for me personally, I don't get to go to as many of the security conferences anymore because as the CEO of a late stage A round VC-backed company, I need to make money. And most security conferences are not where you would make money. Going back to the shift from 2022, I'm sure a number of you have either been or seen online the outlandish parties that get thrown at Black Hat and RSA and the large conferences. And we kept all sort of as a community wondering when those larger trade conferences, which I'm going to phrase them that way because they are very expensive and they are meant to really bring a lot of like the cash side to it. And then there's the dollops of the talks that are meant to be educational. Mm-hmm. And Black Hat this past year was the first time I saw what approached the ghost town. I thought it was going to be RSA, but I think the folks who are coming into 24, having missed their budget so much, and I know a number of companies in this state where they don't announce this, where they're getting debt financing and they're doing interim raises because they've lost money and they're just trying to get enough cash to find some resolution. I mean, there are a lot of companies on life support and they couldn't get out of the contracts in RSA in time, but they could for Black Hat. And so what I saw at Black Hat in Vegas in August was a shell of the Black Hat I've always known. And so I think the larger national trade shows where those budgets are a lot more vulnerable to the equity markets, like we're seeing it now.
Yeah, it all comes back to money, huh?
Money is the lifeblood of business. You don't have to start a business for money, but you do need it to keep the idea going.
Yeah, no, and it's kind of funny because taking it to more of a practitioner, you always say like, we're here, cyber's here to enable the business and understand that. And I actually said this on stream a couple months ago. Like, I didn't really understand. Like, I understand that cyber's a cost center, and I understand that we're supposed to enable the business, but I never really understood that until like maybe like 10 or 12 years into my career, when like you're like, no, actually, like this company needs to make money. That's the focus of this company, is to make money. And if you're trying to introduce things that are going to put friction into making money, it's just not going to work. You have to kind of almost shift your mindset on understanding the business side of it.
Yeah, that's a great point. So I've seen a lot of practitioners get really up in arms about like, how dare you call cybersecurity a cost center? We're more important than that. We are. Unless you're a cybersecurity company and that's how you make money, the definition of a cost center is you do not produce revenue, you cost.
Yep.
Right? Finance is a cost center. You don't see people in finance complaining that they're a cost center. They do their jobs. So let's just understand where we fit in the line of things. So I'd mentioned this earlier, and I think this is really important because it helps understand where we fit in that fault line. And again, I think it speaks to a lot of the frustration we as practitioners have in our jobs, because I know a lot of you are approaching burnout and you feel like more is asked of you and nobody really listens and the leadership investment isn't there. And that's part of the burnout, is not feeling valued and having to do more with what feels like less. And then of course we're fighting we're fighting the vendors and the tools that are supposed to make our lives easier, because guess what? Those things don't just instantly make things easier. So there's two kinds of leadership in industry. I care about cybersecurity. I don't care about cybersecurity. That's it. And here's the thing. It's not that the business doesn't care about cybersecurity. It's that they care about being compliant, because compliance is mandatory. I don't get to go make money. I don't get to go do my mission, my purpose, without being compliant. But I can without cybersecurity. So I always get, then some people give the pushback, well, compliance can be cybersecurity. Compliance is a checklist that gives me some security. But cybersecurity is a critical thinking process. Again, why it's not really a journey. It's more of a journey level position, not a beginner position, because it's one that requires critical thinking continuously to adapting your environment to what the requirements are, to your best approach at confidentiality, integrity, and availability, and the assurance of that business operation. But we are a cost center in that approach. And that's how the business looks at us. The folks who write our checks, create the budgets, and set this up, that's their perspective. Now, can you be a useful cost center that can help educate them from where they are to where they can go, and being more of that partner? Absolutely. But recognize how they're looking at you before you enter the room.
Yeah, and you really, I mean, obviously these are all like great knowledge bombs, but the one thing that Bryson said that resonates most with me is he said they care about compliance because they need it to do business. That's why they care about it. It's a requirement for them to do the things they need to do. So 100%, and again, it just kind of underlines and endorses this idea that that's what the business cares about. It's straight cash, homie, right? That's why I got the Randy Moss
Straight cash, homie.
sound effect on the board, is because that's all it is. Now, you do have a ton of experience, Bryson. Basically military and federal space, private space, all sorts of like interesting stuff. Reggie's got a question, and you're uniquely equipped to answer this one. I like it. What are your thoughts on working in the government versus corporate 100, pros and cons? And if you want to take it to any other dimension based on your diverse experience, please do.
Yeah, so I've been military, intelligence community. I've done I've created a services cybersecurity company, Grim. I've created a product cybersecurity company, that's Scythe. I've created a nonprofit, the ICS Village. So I have literally, other than I guess having been purely in academia, I've done just about every different thing you can do. But I do lecture and I do work at the Cyber Science Advisory Board at West Point. So I'm not in academia, but I do support. So first, I think the major thing is not government versus commercial or government versus public. It's the size of the organization is the greater indicator of what you're going to experience. And U.S. government is like the largest employer on the planet and is the largest organization on the planet. And so what you get is a lot of large organization. And I've been on the commercial side and seen very, very large organizations. And it's so not surprising that they have the same problems. Scale and success are the greatest enemies of excellence, because as I scale, I need to be more consistent in the output, which means I need to reduce sigma of how my people of the process and technology and what they're actually doing in their jobs. And so therefore, what you find in large organizations is you get more and more of the bureaucratic process, because I'm ensuring a consistent output from the people in the groups. That's why they do it. That's where you're getting hammered by system. I will offer a personal opinion that is a little bit different, because there are things in certain fun parts of the government and the military that you can never do in the commercial world. It's kind of why we have the national security aspect of what we do. And so my recommendation is I think everybody should go and do at least 2 years, particularly when you're younger, because as you get older, it gets harder and harder as you get further in your career to go take the step back to possibly jump over like that. But getting an opportunity to get the clearance and see the really like the edge of what's possible in certain positions, or if nothing else, to really understand how the government works, because you're going to be working with it one way or the other, even if you're in a purely private company. I mean, we work under the rules, norms, and expectations that the government creates. And having that exposure just makes it a little bit easier to understand the why and the how of that.
Well, there you go. I love it. Thinking about it is not government versus tech, because I get this question periodically too, because I also have worked in federal space and private, and I never really thought about it that way, but it is true. Bigger companies, a lot of process, a lot of bloat, a lot of don't think for yourself, just follow the process. That'll be fine here. So Bryce, I got a great question for you, and this is one that people who have worked in industry for a while struggle with. You had mentioned companies that, and this was in private chat, so I can't put it on screen, but you had mentioned companies that have two kinds of leaders. They either care about cyber or they do not care about cyber, and that's all you got. DJ Bisek actually wanted to know, like, how do you, Bryson, how do you get C-levels to care about cyber before you get hacked, right? And they always say in academic textbooks, like, prove your return on investment, like, show the ROI, yeah. So what do you say to someone who just doesn't, like, you're like, oh, we really need
to show me how I did the thing that prevented the thing that I haven't seen yet.
Yeah.
Oh, cybersecurity is quantifiable. Show me how I'm turning it from a 67 into an 82. It's bullshit. This is, in fact, I was the keynote at an academic event earlier today, and it blew my mind the things that these PhDs did not know that I would consider very basic cybersecurity understanding of the threat landscape and how the real world actually works in a security operations center. And that's just, nobody knows everything. And I mean, this is part of where I think people like me and John really resonate, because not only have we been doing this so long, but we have the practical experience and the ability to distill what we've seen over decades of that down into very useful things. So to the cybersecurity thing, I intentionally phrase it as care and don't care about cybersecurity, because it gets the attention and it helps, again, frame it from psychologically, the sociology of where they're coming from. And then I explain what that actually means, because it's not really a like against it. It's just I'm bought into the compliance, and if I'm going to do more, I really need to understand that. And so this is where it comes from. I'm shocked how many people don't know what their own organizations actually do. And I mean that really, like, think about it. I know they can kind of describe, I don't know, I work at FedEx. We like mail stuff. But have you actually gone and talked to the business operations folks, walked the floor if there's an operational technology component, actually seen? I saw this. I don't talk about it often because it takes away from my elite hacker cred. I built a fully functional global configuration management database for a multinational. It took me 4 years. I had to build groups of people throughout different continents. I made a lot of mistakes because I couldn't read resumes, and where university in one, like in South Africa meant high school, not a university. And I hired a guy without a degree. Little things like that you learn. But none of the other people I saw in IT and IT security actually knew what the manufacturing plants did. Like, I don't know, we build stuff. It's like, you need to know more than that. And the reason is because once you understand what that is, then you can start to understand, well, what do they care about? What are they trying to do? Right? Security is a partnership. And too often we're at the end, we complain we're at the end. When we're at the end, we're a no because, oh, risk. Just look, capital R, risk. You're bad. You should have brought us in earlier. Get out of my way, nerd. I don't care, right? I'm gonna roll this out because this is a $10 million investment we've made. Oh no, wish I'd done it better. I don't care, right? Again, that's a compliance focus. I've checked the boxes. I'm rolling this out. Now, they might have to eat their hat because they care when they get pwned in 2 days, but you can't predict that, right? So there is no way to quantify that and argue it. The best that I find is go to them, figure out where you can tie into their priorities, and the most common area that a business already understands, already invests in, and oftentimes ties to compliance and regulation is disaster recovery and business continuity planning, which, oh, by the way, doesn't that tie to assurance and availability in the cybersecurity side? Doesn't this tie to the scourge of ransomware that we've really been feeling for the last 4 years as it's grown, although it took a step back in 2022 because of the Ukrainian war, and it's back 2023. We're right back to where it was before, and it's growing. That is a real world threat. It affects all of us equally, and it ties right into an area that the business already does care about, has already invested in, and continues to invest in. That's a simple example of how you can tie those priorities together in a way that you win.
Yeah. So if you're listening, if you work in cyber and you don't understand like beyond the surface level of how your company makes money, you should definitely try to remedy that, because Bryson's saying it's critical, and demonstrating why. I mean, what do you think? Like, just reaching out and being like, hey, like, plant manager, yeah, I'd love to walk the plant floor. What do you think?
Yeah, I'll give you an example. So I talked to probably 25 to 30 asset owners, so operational technology a year. Most of them are some IT security team that's been tapped with dealing with the IT-OT convergence. And there's all this risk that these plant managers and control system engineers weren't aware of, and we need to come in and save the day. And they build a very fancy technical architecture. And usually they come to me on average about a year and a half into it not being implemented. And they hand me the technical architecture and they go, can you review this and tell us what we did wrong, which is why they're not doing it? And I'm like, there's nothing wrong with your diagram. Have you talked to the business? And they're always like, well, yes, we did. We told them we needed to do this. I'm like, so you went to a senior vice president who, runs like $100 million P&L line, and you told her what you were going to do. And You were surprised she never gave you another meeting?
Yeah.
When it comes down to this, plant managers are like demigods. Whenever you think corporate's important, a plant manager owns that plant and they are like a demigod. They are like a mythical creature and everything goes around them in that plant. They are responsible for the safety, the operation, the uptime, the revenue, all of that. They are like demigods. If you get them against you, you're dead. So you have to come over and they're not going to give you a lot of time. So you want to start not so much taking the plant manager's time, but getting the plant manager to buy off on like, hey, I'd like to come and see this or this and this. They will then figure out the right people. They'll probably bring in the assistant plant manager to oversee it. There'll be OT engineers that'll be running different lines that have different things. They'll be happy to talk to you. And so it's not that I need to get the plant manager's time because you're not going to get a lot of it. They're a really important person, but getting those folks below them with their permission and their visibility and them feeling like they're a part of it, that's how you do that.
That's great advice. And I didn't know, I mean, I worked in manufacturing for a bit, but I didn't realize the plant manager had that kind of gravity. That's fascinating.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, and I will say personally for anyone, like whether it's at a manufacturing plant or an energy production plant, or you work at a hospital, right? Like the higher level up people, you know, it's not that they're executives and they're, you know, like they're beholden to like some special thing. They're busy. They're really busy people. And honestly, a lot of times they don't care about cybersecurity. Like you're just there and they know that you're protecting them, but they don't care about like 0 days and like next gen firewalls. So like when you do get time with them, you have to be incredibly focused and you have to be talking to them in the dimension of language that they understand. It's like a board meeting, right? You get like 3 slides, 5 minutes. Like you're not in there like shucking and jiving. So very, very important when you're doing these type of things and engaging with them. I love it. The plant manager is a land baron. Okay. People in chat getting it up. All right. So Bryson, right before we get out of here, I do want to say thank you very much. Is there anything going on in Bryson, Scythe, Grimm's world that we at Simply Cyber should be mindful of?
So Grimm just announced their defensive automotive engineering classes for next year. For those of you who aren't aware, Trey Bilbray, who helped create the Neon Temple and is our lead emulation engineer at Scythe, him and Tyler and a few other folks, we do free training at Scythe. So it's not going to be like 8 hours, 16 hours or more of like the anti-siphon level, because we're looking more at exposure and feeder. But we do a lot of hands-on training. If you go to the Scythe events page,
it's on the Scythe events. I'm sorry.
Yeah, Grimm is the defensive automotive engineering. That's just specialized training.
Okay.
But Scythe, much more of the like learning threat intelligence, how to build a threat, different tools to actually emulate the threat. Of course, we'll actually show you our tool because we created a commercial tool to that, but you get to play with that for free. How to do threat hunting, how to build detection engineering in Sigma. And we're constantly updating that. And there's little stuff. Yeah, we collaborate with Jake Williams. So for those you know, Malware Jake, he's also a part of what we build and do.
And I'll drop a link in chat for everybody to go check this out. Workshops at Scythe coming up, and the Grimm, the automotive technical training as well. I'll drop a link into that as well. Great resources for everybody in the Simply Cyber community. All right, thank you so much, Bryson, for coming here today, for sharing your hot takes and rants, bouncing off John Strand while you had it. I got to tell you, on behalf of everybody in chat, the chat was flying. People were loving it. A lot of people really appreciating the real talk, right? The candor, the pulling no punches kind of thing. Sometimes the truth hurts, but you know what? Like it's at least it's true. And then you can move forward knowing what's going on. I want to thank you, Bryson, for being here. I genuinely appreciate it.
Thanks, man.
All right, everybody, be well. And until next time, stay secure. Hey everybody, I hope you enjoyed that content. Keep the cybersecurity train going by connecting with the other Simply Cyber community resources. We have the Discord server that's lively and always keeps the conversation going. You can connect with me directly on LinkedIn. And also every single weekday morning on the Simply Cyber channel, we're doing live daily cyber threat briefings, 8 a.m. Eastern time, as well as Thursday at 4:30 p.m. We're doing live stream interviews with industry experts, and we produce videos that we push out every Wednesday morning. I'm Jerry from Simply Cyber. I hope you enjoyed the content, and we'll see you in the